Basilica in Rome is very famous, also because it is, I don't want to say 24 hours a day, but most of the day is open for confessions. So as the Pope was in the church, the confessors came out of the confessional rooms and they gathered around the Pope, and the Pope reminded them of three things. When you hear confessions, when you give the penance, when you give absolution, three things. Mercy, mercy, mercy. And the Pope is asking us in relationships, in looking at the world, in looking at society, use the eyes of mercy. The second reason why I want to underline mercy, you remember the first letter of the Corinthians, chapter 13. It is the famous hymn to charity. Do you remember? Love is patience, love is kind, love is merciful. At the end of that hymn to charity, St. Paul concludes with this statement. In the end, there are only three things that matter: faith, hope, and love. And if you remember, the greatest of all is love, mercy. If you remember, Pope Francis wrote an encyclical, and the title of the encyclical is Laudato Si. It's on the environment. I'm sure that there was a lot of talk, a lot of criticism also. Somebody said, why does the Pope speak about the environment? And the Pope answered by saying, everything that touches the life of the person is of concern of the Church. But I want to say, why do I want to underline that encyclical? Because the Pope, if you remember, used a very beautiful expression. We are concerned about our common home. I'm sure that some of you might have heard this expression when he was speaking about the environment, our common home. It's interesting, the Pope did not speak about common house. A house is bricks, a house is the wood, a house is the floor, a house is cement, a house is stainless steel. Common home is relationships, home is love, home is forgiveness, home is reaching out to each other. Home is, when we want to make something special, if you come, I say, I invite you to my home. That's my house, but this is my home. It's very important to realize that love and mercy are a part of who we are. And Mary is the mother of mercy because she teaches us how to be merciful. And here I want to start. There is a story that my grandmother used to tell me, and it is a little, I would say, a little rough. But she was telling us from the time we were children how the heart of a mother loves despite whatever happens. Mom loves all the way. And the story goes this way, and as I said, it's a little rough, so don't take it, in the negative way. So, in the mountains, this teenager wants to belong to a gang. And as he is going through that process of being, welcome into this gang of criminals, he has to pass the final test. And the final test is the boss of the gang tells him, if you want to enter our gang is the most terrible gang that you have. The last test, you have to go home, kill your mom, take out her heart and bring it to me. So this guy is a little crazy, so I want to belong to the gang. He goes home, he kills his mother, he cuts the heart of mom out, and as he's walking toward the hiding place of the gang, he trips, and he falls down, and he bends his shoulder, and from the heart of mom, the voice comes out, son, did you hurt yourself? And this is the story that my grandmother used to. Every time I tell the story, goosebumps. You know, because mom loves, despite what you do and how you are, mom will never abandon you. And this image, Mary does not abandon the sinner. Mary does not abandon you no matter who you are. Mary is the mother of mercy. And I believe that Jesus is stressing this idea of mercy because he learned from mom. And today, Mary is asking you and me, are you willing to learn mercy? Two things. You remember letter of St. Paul to the Romans, chapter 8. Paul is so strong when he says, nothing can separate us from the love of God. And Paul has a list. Height, death, your sinfulness, nothing can separate you from the love of God. For me, it's good to mention this to you. Why? Because we live in a world, in a society, where nobody does nothing for nothing. I do this if you do that. There is one who loves us despite our limitations. One who loves us despite our shortcomings, despite our sinfulness. God loves you. And of course, you know already, as well as I do, that the love of God, since God forgives me all the time, is not an invitation to sin even more. Since God forgives me, let me do bad things. No. Because God loves you, the love of God is like a magnet. He attracts you to love in return. To answer to that love with love. And the other thing, you know, nothing can separate us from the love of God. You know, St. Paul has another beautiful phrase, chapter 5. Think about this, is so great. While we were still sinners, God sent His Son for our salvation. While we were still sinners, God sent His Son for our salvation. Let me turn it around. God did not expect you and me to be perfect before loving us. God did not expect you and me to be perfect before sending Jesus. Jesus did not expect you and me to be perfect before dying for you and for me on the cross. If you want to make it concrete, you know, down to earth, you remember this morning I said our faith has to be practical, concrete, actions, do. I don't expect you to be perfect before loving you. And I hope that you don't expect each other to be perfect before loving each other. I hope that you don't expect your children to be perfect before loving them, or your husband to be perfect before loving him, or your wife to be perfect before loving him. Why? Because our model is God. It was when we were still sinners that God sent His Son. God loves you now, and His love invites you to conversion. There are so many stories in the Gospel that are